Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Suchit Ahuja. Suchit is an associate professor of business technology management at John Molson School of Business, Concordia University. Suchit received his PhD degree in management information systems from the Smith School of Business at Queen's University in Kingston. Suchit's research focuses on digital strategy and innovation, digital transformation, digital platform, frugal digital innovation, and responsible innovation. Today, we will discuss digital innovation. It's a great pleasure to have you on my show, Suchit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dobson. It's a pleasure to be here.
Suchit, your research focus is on digital innovation. Please share what digital innovation is and how it works.
Sure. Thank you. So yes. Just to sort of set the stage, right? So innovation is basically trying to do things in new ways or bringing novelty to a business, a process, a function, uh, products, services, whatever else. When we say digital innovation, what we're trying to do is embed uh, technology or digital technology within those processes, within those functions, within your products and services to sort of increase the value proposition from being completely analog processes to being more digital processes where you can have many more users, many more functionalities, and many more types of people and businesses connecting and playing around with your products and services that you offer. So digital innovation in a sense is the first step towards embedding technology to then create more value that then brings you more customers and helps you grow as a company, especially in today's age when you have like AI, blockchain, all of these other technologies that are almost democratized, right? So anybody can play around with them. So digital innovation essentially happens outside the boundaries of the firm, right? We're used to innovation that is kind of locked inside the boundaries. Then we had the
Mhm,
phenomenon of something like open innovation, which was saying, okay, now let's try going outside the firm
mhm,
and connect with your customers better. But now what we're saying is do this, but do it digitally, right?
mhm.
So that's what digital innovation is all about.
Okay,
Bringing the appropriate technology, the appropriate digital elements to your business.
okay. Suchit, yeah, often digital transformation is used interchangeably for digital innovation. Are there
Mhm.
difference between digital innovation and digital transformation?
Sure, there are similarities and differences.
Mm,
So, digital innovation, as I just explained, right, it's the process
yeah.
of embedding the technologies, etc. Digital transformation is completely sort of taking your business and transforming it digitally.
Okay.
So, for example, GE, right? I'm giving an example that failed, but the thinking was there nonetheless, right? And I can
Mm,
give you another example which was successful. But let's talk about GE, right? So GE was in the business of selling engines for aircraft, for other industries, etc. And these are physical products. What GE's grand plan to transform its business was to embed IoT or Internet of Things sensors into
mhm,
the engines and then
mhm,
sell the engines as a service rather than a product. So we have in the age of software as a service, platform as a service, etc. They were trying to do aircraft engines as a service, right? And so what does that mean? That means they have better sensing capabilities through the IoT devices.
mhm,
They can predict when engines are failing. They can predict, when they need servicing before things go wrong. And this is enough value proposition for them to be able to sell to their customers. Now, the way they implemented it was probably incorrect. They invested a lot of money, etc., which did not really work out correctly. But
mhm,
anyway, that's one example. Another example would be, let's see, how Netflix
mhm.
started, right? We were
Yeah,
receiving physical DVDs,
yeah.
and then they decided that we're going to completely transform our business
Mhm,
by going digital, which
mhm.
was no more physical product being made, shipped, etc. As long as you have an internet connection, your subscription to Netflix will work. You can sit in the comfort of your home and enjoy watching movies. So digital transformation is taking that business value and
Mhm,
increasing it manifold by
mhm,
actually transforming everything about your products and services and making them digital in a way that makes sense for not just the customer. It also makes sense for your suppliers, yourself as a business, for your employees, and that is the mindset with which transformation happens. It's not easy. Often this is easier said than done. So transformation has a lot of different aspects that need to be taken into account. I mean, as information systems, we've been studying like change
Yeah.
management for a long time, right? So with
Mhm.
transformation, we have to do change management on steroids.
Mhm.
Basically, that's the velocity of change that happens
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you are trying to transform.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need to transform just
Mm.
because there are competitive pressures.
Mm.
You could transform
Mm.
based on
Mm.
your internal
Yeah.
needs as well.
Yeah.
So there are many things about
Yeah.
transformation. I think is a bigger
Yeah.
umbrella term,
Yeah.
and innovation could be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you a slightly different question. So some of the example you mentioned, these are like, existing company, whether it's the Netflix or the or GE, and over the year they transform their organization. And then we have this company who just came out from nowhere, like Uber is a great example. And and they're a great example of innovation. So do you see a parallel or difference between the existing, company who been have a long tenure and then company who
Yeah,
just shows up and nowhere and
yeah.
doing so great?
Yeah, this is a great question because this goes into discussions about uh, in this day and age,
Yeah.
should you even be offering anything physical, right? As
Yeah.
a company, like should a
Yeah.
product or service be physical,
Yeah.
or with Uber and Airbnb now,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
do you need to be resource intensive? Like, do you really need
Yeah.
to own all of the physical infrastructure
Yeah.
that is being provided?
Mm,
And so there is this tension between being
mm,
sort of an incumbent and
mm,
then being born digitally, right? So
mm.
are you a digital native or
Yeah.
are you a digital incumbent, right? It
Yeah.
just makes that is the sort of
Yeah.
tension that
Yeah.
exists in competition these
Yeah.
days. But it
Yeah.
also points to another. Like, I would really like to
Mm,
use this opportunity to
mm,
speak about something that is really relevant and is
mm,
ongoing right now.
mm.
Is DeepSeek, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
DeepSeek came out of nowhere too. You have
Yeah.
Nvidia, which has been in
Yeah.
business forever,
Yeah.
and in the last 5 years, it really has peaked in terms of market cap and value and all of that.
Yeah.
But then you have this, no name out of nowhere competitor that comes in, right?
Yeah.
And it was great for me because one of the areas I study is frugal innovation, right? So
Yeah.
how do you make innovations more affordable?
Yeah.
How do you develop, new products and services more affordably, right? So and if it's digital, it's even better, right? So
Yeah.
so I really think, and the way DeepSeek actually approached it
Mm,
was like,
mm.
okay, we don't need to go to Nvidia and buy all of these new, chips
Yeah.
to get the appropriate compute power. What
Yeah.
we're going to do is repurpose
Yeah.
existing older chips that will then give us similar compute power,
Yeah.
and then we can use training data that's already out there. We don't need to actually go and provide newer training data. Maybe they did it more efficiently. Maybe they did it like in a more meaningful manner to keep their costs low,
Yeah.
and they figured it out, right? So
Yeah.
this really is the essence of
Mm,
being digitally native,
yeah.
is to bring that power of can I do it faster, better, cheaper than everything
Yeah.
that's out there,
Yeah.
right? And then having those digital elements embedded and having those digital capabilities, including your workforce, right? It's
Yeah.
not just about the technology. It's do you have the right people? Do they have the right skills? And can you implement it in a timely manner so that
Yeah.
you are competitive now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are things which are fascinating about this discussion of oh, can a small company coming out of nowhere really come
Yeah.
in and like shock
Yeah.
the competitors in the market?
Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah.
it's happening.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the term quite often used are disruption. I mean, all
Yeah,
business are in disruption stage. So how does this disruption putting all this our classic or our traditional companies on a notice, like how they have to really take the big dive
yeah,
into get into real digital innovation?
yeah. So it might sound cliched, but I'm going to use this phrase. It's,
Yeah.
don't be disrupted, be the disruptor, right?
Okay.
So if you are a company and you're waiting to be disrupted, then
Yeah.
you're already starting with a disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
So the 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 challenge these days is to continuously innovate and continuously disrupt, even if you
Mm.
have to disrupt your own business, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it, someone else will,
Yeah.
right? And so that is putting them on notice, yes,
Yeah.
but then also it's can you really think about ways in which you can offer more value to your customers by trying to do things in the past that almost seemed impossible, right? So kind of
Yeah.
like DeepSeek, right? Okay,
Yeah.
you probably are familiar with the
I
interview
am.
that Sam Altman went to
Yeah.
when he went to India. They asked him, you
Yeah.
know, can India do small language models and compete with OpenAI? And he said,
Yeah.
I would caution you and say that there is no point competing with us. We are way too far ahead of you, right? And then 5 years later, what happens is DeepSeek comes and shocks them,
Yeah.
right? So this is, I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
supporting, like, it's one thing that I want to say out there is
Yeah.
like, I'm not completely supportive of DeepSeek
Mm.
either, because every AI
Yeah.
technology has some biases, and we
Yeah.
clearly see those.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is their
Yeah.
methodology and the way they have implemented it and the
Mm.
way they designed the product is for the future. I think
Mm.
that's going to set a template,
Yeah.
because people are no longer going to be constrained
Yeah.
by the lack of
Yeah.
resources, money,
Yeah.
funding, computing power, whatever it
Mm.
is. They've kind of done this. Just this morning, I posted something about small language models. There's a
Mm.
company in San Francisco that is being run on small language models right now, and they're developing small language models that will eventually run on cell phones.
Wow.
So no need for big computing. That's the vision. That's the vision, right? So let's see. I mean, this is an evolving landscape, right?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So I want to ask you, how does digital innovation contribute to positive societal change?
Oh, this is a beautiful question. Like I really enjoy working on societal impact
Mm.
uh, issues
Mm-hmm.
using digital technology. Because in my own research, actually, most of my thesis research was done in India and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But the cases that I found in India were so powerful in
Mm.
terms of, not just the economics, but
Mm.
also the social impact, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way to drive social impact, is to actually use technology for betterment, right? Use technology for good, right?
Mm.
Use technologies to solve grand challenges, right? So poverty alleviation,
Mm.
education,
Mm.
sanitation, um, uh, uh, some kind of livelihood. You can provide livelihoods through technology.
Mm.
So it's one of those things where what I see is the power of platforms actually being used, digital platforms that
Mm.
bring an ecosystem of workers
Mm.
together to
Mm.
solve a certain problem
Mm.
for society, but then also ends up generating enough value so that those workers feel
Mm.
more empowered
Yeah.
for those, than they were previously, right? So
Mm.
in my own case that I looked at in India,
Mm.
we worked with a platform that was providing livelihoods to waste management workers in India.
Mm.
So, waste management was a super informal,
Mm.
process back in, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And this company came in and said, okay, we're going to solve this problem because the workers are being exploited, because they were daily wage workers who
Mm.
would go work with the trash mafia, believe it or not, right? There's a trash mafia that pays them daily wages for going and collecting trash from different households. So then
Mm.
these guys come and take the trash and then dump it on the side of the road, and that's it.
Mm.
That's the trash collection process.
Mm.
So what this company did was said, okay, this is a societal issue.
Mm.
We're going to solve this by actually creating a platform that uh, promotes and monetizes recycling. So
Mm.
we're going to ask these people to join the platform. We're going to train them. We're going to give them uniforms. We're going to teach them how to speak in English. We're
Mm.
going to geotag their phones. So simple phones, not iPhones,
Mm.
simple phones
Yeah.
that just show you, okay, these are the households that have signed up for the service. Go
Mm.
here in the morning, go here in the afternoon, go pick up stuff. They
Yeah.
geotag those. They created a trash collection center.
Mm.
They appointed one of these people
Mm.
as a manager at the center and said, you're responsible for everything that goes on here. You're
Yeah.
responsible for the trash
Yeah.
coming in,
Yeah.
recycling, sorting, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you sell
Yeah.
it to the recycling market. And
Yeah.
whatever money you get on a daily basis, you give
Yeah.
to the workers.
Yeah.
So it became a sustainable livelihood sort of ecosystem
Yeah. Yeah.
for these people, who
Yeah.
were then able to not
Yeah.
just change their lives, but they were like,
Mm.
their children could go to school.
Mm.
They broke the stigma of being waste workers, actually,
Yeah.
and they became workers that were seen as, dignified workers in society.
Mm. Mm.
And they got guaranteed wages because the platform was paying them, right? They got
Mm,
guaranteed wages every month, so they could have insurance,
mm,
they could go to the doctor, they could do so
mm,
many other things that you could not do previously.
mm.
The citizens who kind of through social media engaged with the
Yeah,
platform and signed up for the services,
yeah,
what did they get? Well,
yeah.
they got regular trash services, right?
Mm,
Regular trash cleanup, this, that.
mm.
What did the government get? No more dumping on the side of the road.
Yeah,
Everything goes to the trash collection center,
yeah,
everything gets processed.
yeah,
What did the recyclers get? The recyclers joined the platform. They got a guaranteed supply of recycling
yeah,
material every day.
yeah, yeah,
So it's just the power of
yeah,
doing something positive
yeah.
using platforms, because
Mm,
yeah, we have Airbnb, Uber, and all of these other platforms.
mm,
But what I saw in India was like an impactful platform that has the
mm.
power to actually change society,
Yeah,
right? Like it
yeah.
can change people's lives. And I think that is the real power that we
Mm,
bring to the table when we talk about uh, innovation, digital innovation that can help alleviate societal problems.
yeah. This is a great example of positive societal change. Suchit, how are digital platforms driving meaningful societal social impact?
Yeah, so that was one example.
Yeah,
From a research point of view, like
yeah,
there's many things that
yeah,
could be discussed, right? So we are
yeah,
socio-technical researchers, right? So
yeah,
when the platform comes in, uh,
yeah,
especially in contexts that are
yeah,
resource constrained or in
yeah,
emerging markets, etc., that
yeah,
deal with grand challenge types of problems, right?
yeah,
Poverty alleviation,
yeah,
etc.,
yeah.
they have to really rethink their business model, right? They cannot deploy the same business model that they would deploy in a traditional platform business into a social impact platform business. So what they need to do is then work with the community first, like,
Mm,
determine what the
mm,
requirements are,
mm,
determine, what are the
mm,
socio-technical aspects. So I
mm,
came up with this, mapping of three or four things, which is they need to take care of the social and the physical, right? So socio-physical aspects. They need to take care of the socio-digital aspects, because there's the socio-digital with the phone tagging, etc. The socio-physical took place with the trash collection center, that was revamped.
mm, mm,
Uh, and then they need to take care of the digito-physical aspects as well, right? So how do you end up taking care of this much trash and keeping actually track of it, so that so what did the company do? They actually built an ERP system that was for trash management,
mm.
and they deployed it within that center. So
Yeah,
there's these different ways in which you can perceive, and then
yeah.
when the social, the physical, and the digital intersect, that's where the platform really brings power, right? That's where
Mm,
it brings the impact. And
yeah.
so that is something which is kind of missing from the discussion a bit in
Mm,
the literature. And so that's
mm,
where my contribution is. And we
mm,
are trying to sort of work on more examples of this. I just wrote a teaching case actually for IV, which is
okay.
similar platform, but it's doing healthcare management for patients in rural India.
Mm,
So, and it's doing some phenomenal work for like maybe 1/100th of the cost that we would pay in Canada.
mm, mm.
Just bringing basic healthcare services
Yeah,
to millions of people
yeah,
at a fraction of the cost anywhere else.
yeah,
And that platform is amazing as well in terms of
yeah,
what it's able to do and how
yeah.
diffuse the services are and how they use decentralization and democratization of different
Mm,
technologies
yeah,
to connect people who would previously have no access to doctors in the
mm,
cities to
yeah,
then bring just
mm,
primary care to
yeah,
the rural areas. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Another great example, Suchit. And these are some great examples. I want to ask you something different. Can you share some of the possible unintended consequences of rapidly advancing technology?
Yes, yes. I mean, because we are in IS, we are familiar, right, with the literature on the dark side of technology.
Yeah,
And I have colleagues that I spar with in my department
yeah,
that are dark side
yeah,
researchers, and so I'm
yeah.
trying to show them the bright side, and they're trying to show me the dark side. So, but I'm more positivist in my outlook. So like
Nice.
I see more optimistic things are coming out of technology. But yeah, there
Good.
is a danger. Yes, there is a danger of exploitation.
Yeah,
There's a danger of being co-opted
yeah,
without your knowledge into
yeah,
signing something that
yeah,
or using a technology that you have
yeah,
no idea what type of data it's collecting,
yeah,
especially for marginalized and vulnerable populations.
yeah,
Even in Canada, this is a concern, right? With
yeah,
like the indigenous populations and the First Nations, no matter how much technology you deploy, there is kind of this trust deficit that
yeah.
exists. So the burden of actually trying to overcome that is with the service provider, right? So whoever is the service provider needs to create trust within a system for them to be able to then use those technologies to be to see the impact, right?
Yeah.
So One project I worked on was with a startup that was catering to nurses in the in a First Nation community.
Okay.
And this was one of the initial key findings was they don't need to do anything technology wise unless they can actually first build trust with the community.
Mm,
So there were a number
yeah.
of steps that were taken to actually go there and build trust and
Yeah.
actually get the patients to come see the nurses, because
Yeah.
even there was stigma of
Yeah.
First Nations patients not trusting the nurses, not going
Yeah.
and seeing them even
Yeah.
when they needed, like in their health, called
Yeah.
for going to the clinic to be seen, but no.
Yeah.
So the nurses on their part had to do a lot, and the
Mm,
startup had to kind of change the way it was deploying the technology
yeah.
to then go to the community and see,
Yeah.
okay, what
Yeah.
what are the
Yeah.
design elements and what are
Yeah.
the technology elements that we can actually
Yeah.
build into the technology
Yeah.
for the patients to be able to trust the nurses, right?
Yeah.
So whether
Yeah.
it was using, indigenous languages, signage,
Yeah.
symbols, whatever else,
Mm,
just to sort of get them into a mindset that, having these nurses is actually beneficial to us.
mm,
So that's the sort of work that needs to be done
yeah.
in order
Yeah.
for technology
Yeah.
to be used responsibly, right? So
Yeah.
that's another area that I work in, is like
Yeah.
responsible innovation
Yeah.
and responsible digital tech. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another aspect of this where
Yeah.
you have to constantly reflect
Yeah.
on the needs of your customers,
Yeah.
especially if your
Yeah.
customers are vulnerable and marginalized populations.
Yeah.
And then you have to go through a process of reconciliation of what was done in
Mm,
terms of whether it is helping them or not. And
yeah.
there's a whole framework
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
responsible innovation.
Yeah.
There's a paper that I did for Information Systems Journal that has that framework that I
Mm,
utilized and
mm,
added to. So there's a lot of good work to be still remains to be done in this area. But again,
okay.
the dangers are that you will probably end up harming
Yeah.
a population instead of trying, even if with the best of intentions you go and try
Yeah.
to do good, right? So
Yeah.
whether your algorithms are biased,
Yeah.
whether the way you are rolling out technology is seen
Mm,
as a colonial imposition, right?
yeah.
That's another challenge, is to, okay, how do we break these barriers of
Yeah.
history?
Yeah.
Uh, you could also end up crossing cultural barriers. So very important to understand cultural
Yeah.
nuances.
Yeah.
Uh, linguistic nuances also is a challenge. So there's many layers of uh, how harm could be caused. But then the onus is on us as researchers and on us as technology practitioners
Yeah.
to actually be conscientious
Yeah.
and go into these environments with a I always call this, like, you need to be humble, right?
Mm,
you
yeah.
you don't go into a setting like this and say,
Mm,
I know everything and I'm going to implement it like it has been
yeah.
designed. Well,
Yeah.
those designs don't work in your context, sorry.
Yeah.
You have to relearn the
Yeah.
context and then
Yeah.
relearn how you deploy technology in this context, right?
Yeah.
So I have
Yeah.
a I have a student that's working on digital educational technology,
Mm,
a project. It's very early stages. We've just started a discussion. We're not
mm,
we've not signed up, or we don't even have the funding. It's just a conversation that's been going on uh,
nice.
to look at digital educational tools that are being used in a community
Mm,
a school in
mm,
the Northwest Territory.
okay.
So that will
Okay.
be, I mean, I've learned so much just by talking to people who've been in that context and have,
Yeah.
have kind of learned from it. And
Yeah.
some of it actually defies
Yeah.
everything that we are being taught as
Mm,
technology practitioners. Like,
yeah.
it defies it. Like, you have to
Yeah.
kind of go there and understand
Yeah.
what are the
Yeah.
nuances, how do you
Yeah.
design things, what are their
Yeah.
needs. We don't even know their
Yeah.
needs, right? So this is kind of the mindset with which we can approach
Yeah.
something like the dark side, right? And to convert the dark side maybe into the bright side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that leads me to ask you this question. So given these are some unintended consequences which happen with any technology, unfortunately. So what is the role of responsible innovation?
yeah, so okay, so good. So that's a good question. So responsible innovation actually provides you with a framework.
Yeah.
It's not the full answer, but
Yeah.
it's a framework that you can begin to use,
Yeah.
right? So what does responsible innovation say? It says,
Yeah.
okay, the first principle is do no harm, right?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of build any research project or
Yeah.
or any technology solution
Yeah.
looking at the principle of doing no harm. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? That means everything that I said previously,
Mm.
plus what the framework calls for, right? And that's the
Mm.
starting point, right? That's the
Mm.
minimum that you need to do is be
Mm.
to go into this, you need to anticipate, right? So
Mm.
anticipate the needs of the community, anticipate the needs of the marginalized population.
Mm.
And it does not, by anticipation, I do not mean, go read papers. You
Yeah.
actually need to go engage. You need to go engage with them and look at the needs and begin
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
Uh, then the second part would be to be reflective, right? So
Yeah.
you reflect on what was learned, you
Mm.
reflect on what the literature is saying, you
Mm.
reflect on your what you were taught, and then if it needs change, you need to be humble enough to actually change it, right?
Mm.
Don't let your ego crush this whole
Yeah.
project because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not going to yield any results.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the relearning part and reflective part.
Mm.
Constantly reflecting upon what was being done and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Third part is inclusion. So you
Okay.
have to include the community into the project, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I by inclusion it means just like we do in prototype development, agile, whatever, right? We go to the customer and we
Yeah.
say, okay, now let's work. Here's what I built. Does it work? Give us
Yeah.
feedback. Whatever
Yeah.
whatever feedback you have, we will take that and implement into the next iteration. Similarly, here you would go and do that, but you would have to do that in a manner that's actually understandable for those communities,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
they're not tech savvy.
Yeah.
They might be, but often they're not. So
Mm.
what you have to do is um, go to the lowest common denominator and say, this is the
Mm.
baseline. What else
Mm.
would you like? How can I
Mm.
improve this so that you use it for your functionality,
Yeah.
right? And then the last part of this is responsiveness. So if
Yeah.
something goes wrong or if something needs change,
Yeah.
you have to be responsive. And this is kind of
Yeah.
a continuous cycle that
Yeah.
keeps going on and on
Yeah.
until you're at a good stopping point
Yeah.
where it's a self-sustaining
Mm.
piece of technology or product,
Mm.
service, whatever solution
Yeah.
that you've handed it to them to be run by the community, right?
Yeah.
So that's another aspect of this. So
Yeah.
again, so that's the responsible innovation framework, and what IS can do is like adapt it,
Yeah.
use components from it, but then
Yeah.
also based on our learnings, we can
Yeah.
we can tweak it. We can tweak
Yeah.
it for different contexts. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a very doable framework for developing a responsible innovation. Thank you for sharing your framework and model. Uh, Suchit, your research also studied community-driven innovation, and you give some of the example. Uh, can you share how community-driven based innovation works?
sure, sure. So there are two or three different
Yeah,
models that we are taught, right?
yeah,
So there's the
yeah,
top-down model of
yeah,
you know
yeah,
innovation, top-down model of technology. you
yeah,
know Somebody makes a policy, somebody designs a solution. It
yeah,
usually government
yeah,
comes down,
yeah.
everybody uses it.
Mm,
Then there is the bottom up, right? So the bottom
mm,
up is somebody faces the problem within a community, an organization, a business, even within universities, right? The students will
mm.
come up with their own solutions,
Yeah,
software, whatever, to kind of say, okay, I have a problem, I solve this. And then somebody who's at a higher level within the organization sees it and says, oh, okay, this works, let's institutionalize it, let's create a process around it, let's get the benefits of this for everybody, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
in a similar notion, we see that there is a lot of potential in like grassroots solutions
Mm,
that the community can design. So we saw a lot of examples of this during COVID, right? Like
mm,
during the pandemic, there were a host of communities that came together, designed their own solutions because it was impossible for them to be
mm,
reliant on
mm,
supply chains that were broken due to the pandemic. So they came up with their own grassroots solutions. And that process of development of grassroots solution is fascinating because
mm,
what does it use? What we saw in our research was it was using the SMAC stack, right? So
mm.
social media, mobile analytics, cloud computing, and Internet of Things
Yeah,
devices.
yeah,
Affordable technologies, accessible
yeah,
technologies, readily available technologies that are out there that people can simply grasp and start building stuff with it, right? But it ends
yeah,
up not just benefiting them,
yeah,
it ends up actually benefiting the community. And so we
yeah.
saw a lot of examples of like WhatsApp being
Mm,
repurposed into
mm,
a supply chain solution.
mm.
This was probably
Yeah,
like in India and
yeah,
Singapore,
yeah.
where entire grocery stores were pretty much running on WhatsApp, and
Yeah,
it's because
great.
it was fascinating to see that and how the supply chain was reorganized to
Yeah,
actually work so that
yeah,
some people who couldn't afford to pay for food did not
Yeah.
really have to pay for
Yeah.
food. The
Yeah.
food was still being delivered to
Yeah.
them, but
Yeah.
somebody else was picking up the tab saying, oh,
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to have, resources. Let me use
Yeah.
it for the benefit of the community, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
in hospitals, we saw a number of hospitals with oxygen ventilator valves uh, being designed through 3D printing, right? Shared
Mm.
resources, a 3D printer. Okay, somebody sent the design of the product, somebody sent them the raw materials, and
Mm.
then they put this lab in the basement of the hospital,
Mm.
just building the valves by themselves. Because what was happening, there were no valves available on the market, or there was a
Mm.
3 month waiting period for
Mm.
them to have these
Yeah.
valves for the oxygen
Yeah.
circulation
Yeah.
to be created. So that's another example where you have the community coming together, pooling
Yeah.
its resources,
Yeah.
and then trying to organize a process or supply chain around it, so
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
it's delivered to
Yeah.
where the needs, where you have the most needs, right? And they're doing
Yeah.
this without sophisticated customer
Yeah.
relationship management
Yeah.
software,
No.
no ERP. So there is
No.
something going on here, which
Yeah.
is like, driving the
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
tendency
Yeah.
to put together whatever resources you have to solve
Yeah.
a problem, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that process is just fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, it's innovation. Yeah, I had someone talking from India that how they're using the WhatsApp app to order the retail the for retail purposes like clothing store.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
it's
Yeah, and
very
so if you look at the trajectory, right
yeah,
after that, what happened?
yeah,
All of these 10-minute delivery services suddenly came up,
yeah,
because they figured out that,
yeah,
okay, maybe we
yeah,
can take whatever was learned and like embed it
yeah,
into our algorithms,
yeah,
and here we go, right? So
yeah,
there is that whole process of, okay, now people are ordering like the iPhone 16 or 15 or whatever, like in 10 minutes, deliver it to my house,
yeah,
and it's happening. It's
yeah,
literally happening. So.
yeah, yeah. No, this is great. So Suchit, where do you see the future of digital innovation headed?
Oh, the future. Oh, yeah. It's this is a good question, but it's a tough one to answer.
Yeah,
I mean, I see really two paths, right? So
yeah,
one is the bright side
mm,
path, and one is the dark
mm,
side path, right? So it just depends
yeah,
on where we go and where is the
mm,
policy and regulation that has been
yeah,
created, right? But
yeah,
things are about to get fascinating, because cheaper, better, faster is coming,
yeah,
right? To everything,
mm,
pretty much,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Less human intervention, more intelligence-driven, interventions. Absolutely, it's going to
mm,
happen, right? Uh, Less uh, human coding into products and services, more uh, self-generated code being driven
mm,
with human
mm,
intervention to kind of like tweak it and fix it.
mm,
That's
mm,
coming, right? Do you
mm,
need to be a programmer to be able to program? Not anymore, because now you have these low code, no code platforms that are coming
mm,
in, right? So
mm,
so that is changing. Uh, we have transactions, right? Blockchain is probably
mm,
going to enhance transactions and transaction capabilities globally, so
mm,
that that's so this is another factor, right? Like,
yeah,
we have to look at this from the perspective of like what's happening globally. We can't just look at it from the perspective of North America and Europe, right?
yeah,
That would
yeah,
be doing a disservice to what the technology evolution
mm,
might look like.
mm,
Um, I mean, the US has a new president that is trying to bring like, more technology innovation back in
mm,
house.
mm,
But I guess the genie's been out of the bottle now, right?
yeah,
Like, it's things are just so diffuse that
yeah,
you never know from where the new innovation might come out. So
yeah,
I actually end up using a number of cases from emerging markets, technology cases, teaching cases
yeah,
in my own class,
yeah,
because I see some fascinating stuff coming out from them. So
mm,
this is where we are headed, right? It's more competition, more disruption,
mm,
very short lived, or no uh, uh, temporal competitive advantages, right? Very,
mm,
okay, yeah, you might have some competitive advantage, but then,
mm,
okay, 10 days
yeah,
later you're done. Like, okay,
yeah,
that's DeepSeek now, so okay,
yeah,
what is the Nvidia going to do next, right?
yeah,
So it's those are the things that are going to come. Like, the process of innovation is going to be accelerated. The process of disruption is going to get accelerated.
yeah,
Because that's the nature of the technologies we are dealing with. Like, the evolution scale is so rapid, and the velocity is so rapid, and
mm,
then the complexity is getting
mm,
even more rapid, right? So
mm,
it's just
yeah,
the fact that these three things are coming together,
yeah,
that are going to, and then competition not just from within but from outside, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
On the dark side, we have to look at how can policy and regulations actually catch up with this, because we see policy and regulations that are
Mm.
lacking,
Yeah.
and they are sort of trying to catch up, but every time they catch up, technology moves ahead, right?
Mm.
So it's a cat and mouse game, right?
Mm.
And then what are the ways to promote? So you have to have a balance, right? You can't have such strict policies and regulations that you end up like closing the room for innovation, right? You
Mm.
have to leave some room for innovation with
Yeah.
the right balance of like the tech policy and regulation. Yeah, you care about privacy, you care about
Mm.
security, you care about all of this,
Yeah.
but that should not be sort of so paramount that you end up taking the
Yeah.
advantage of innovating away from the
Yeah.
innovators, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of that happening, like a lot of protectionist stuff that is going on,
Mm.
which will
Yeah.
then basically sort of uh, negate all of the good work that is being done in terms of creating this innovation ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be this balance. So on the dark side, those are the things that need to be taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned technology is changing very rapidly, and so how can individuals and organizations keep up with these changes?
Oh wow. Yeah, yeah, this is it's tricky. It's really tricky because it's something I tell my students too. It's like I can't teach you everything in the classroom, right? You have to go
Yeah.
out there
Yeah.
and scan the market for yourself. You go
Mm.
scan the environment for yourself and
Mm.
always be in tune with like what's happening and what's coming up next, right?
Mm.
So we have to move away from the mindset of like uh, that everything that will be that's out there that you read, and that is what will happen.
Mm.
By the time what is written comes out and you read it, the market is already shifted, right? So you really need to be embedded
Yeah.
into a an ecosystem uh, for you to really follow what's happening in that ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of real world uh, uh, things need to happen both from an academic and an organizational side, right? Like you
Mm.
have to be in tune with what's happening in the real world. A lot of experiential learning, a lot of opportunities for internships.
Mm.
So that is the way to promote. So let's take the example of internships, right? Or
Mm.
for us, it's co-op
Mm.
programs.
Yeah.
So you embed the students into an organization. They bring
Yeah.
new ideas to the organization, right?
Mm.
And then what the students bring back to us are new ideas from what they did and learned in the organization, right?
Mm.
So I have class after this. I brought one of the guest speakers coming in is actually a former student who's been
Okay.
working in AI and analytics, and she's going to come talk to my class to show them, okay, this is the career path that I followed. These are the
Nice.
things that you need to do. So we need to be sort of the
Yeah.
ambassadors of like bridging the gap between
Yeah.
the literature and the real world, right?
Yeah.
We need to kind of be that bridge
Yeah.
for the students and for. So yeah, organizations will do fine. I mean, they have a lot of resources there. They're
Yeah.
doing a lot of. But again, I think that what's missing is that bridging the gap between the organizations, the customers, and the government,
Mm.
like that policy and regulation part, along with how it affects the people, and then how does the organization actually provide this. I think that's on the organizational side. But on the customer side and on the societal side, I think we really have to break out of the bubble of
Mm.
being in the ivory tower, or the ivory bubble and actually go out and work with people and create those projects, right? So create,
Yeah.
do the MyTax, do the shirts, do all of
Yeah.
these on
Yeah.
the ground projects with communities, with
Yeah.
different, even if it's a not for profit.
Yeah.
Invest more in like your experiential learning
Yeah.
initiatives within the class, so the
Yeah.
students are not just writing exams and midterms, but they're actually
Mm.
going and doing something within the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. Great. Great. Great ideas. Thank you very much. So, what is next for you, Suchit?
Oh, what is next for me? As I said, I have class next, but in the long term, I'm just looking forward to my sabbatical.
Oh,
That will be
nice.
that will be good. It'll help me. So in July, I will go for my sabbatical. So it will
Nice.
it'll help me kind of just take a step back from all of this,
Yeah.
reassess what's
Yeah.
happening, where am I
Yeah.
going, what am I
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are many pending projects in the pipeline, right?
Yeah.
So I told my supervisor that from my doctoral studies that I'm coming to you with projects. So there's a pipeline that was clogged, and I'm going to declog the pipeline of research
Yeah.
and bring it to you, so we can
Yeah.
work on something together. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's what's next. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your time and sharing your work, and all the best, Suchit.
Thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.